case, it gives me great pleasure to pass over to our speakers tonight, Graham and Brian from the Devon Air Ambulance. This is an organisation I think most of us, apart from Kelly down in the Caribbean, will be pretty familiar with. I know back in my Rotaract days, back in the late 90s, in one year at Saltram Rotaract, the Devon Air Ambulance was actually our sponsored charity. And I remember they just opened up their shop on Mutley Plain, and myself and a couple of us actually put the new signage up for the shop there at the time. So it's an organisation and charity very close to my heart. So it's great to have the two guys with us tonight to tell us a bit more about the work they're doing. So Brian and Graham, over to you.
Okay, let's just make sure we've got.
Thank you very much, Marcel. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, that's fine. My colleague is Brian Chapman. He's the man who does all the gizmos. So he's actually going to do the PowerPoint work, and he will contribute to the conversation as well. I'm Graham Gordon. I'm a volunteer. I've been a volunteer with the Devon Air Ambulance since 1998. I actually used to live in a village in South Hams, and the fundraiser in the village said to me one day, Graham, he said, it's about time you got off your backside and did some fundraising for us. And a runner. So I combined the both and started at Torquay football ground on the South Devon League, from Torquay right down to Kingsbridge, Ivybridge, right up.
Graham, you've got the stutters. Oh dear.
The air ambulance haven't wanted to let me go. I don't know why.
Graham,
Anyway,
you've got the stutters on your internet tonight, sir.
Pardon?
You've got the stutters on your internet.
Oh, yeah, it's not showing that way, but okay, we'll see. I normally preface my talk with two questions, which I will give you the opportunity to answer at the very end. The first one is perhaps more difficult than normal, is where is the nearest Devon Air Ambulance night landing site to you? And the second one is, what is the sporting injury that we attend the most? If you want to ask any questions, do feel free to ask as we go along. Now, I think somewhere along the line, Brian's going to put up the first picture.
Yeah, that's...
Should be a picture of our helicopter.
There you go.
There we go. Oh, we're nearly there. My picture's gone, but let's try it back again. Right. There we go. Right. Our operation started in 1982, and it was started by a lady called Anne Thomas. And Anne, her 18-year-old son, Kerry, was knocked off his bicycle and was seriously injured. Unfortunately, he wasn't successful in getting to hospital in time. And Anne found out that although the ambulance took an hour and a half to get there, had he been able to be airlifted, then his life would have been saved. So she took about 4 to 5 years, meeting a lot of opposition from people who didn't feel it was necessary, until we started in 1992. And in that time, we only operated on 5 days a week, and we leased a helicopter from Bond. And I think, from memory, it used to cost about £10,000 a month, which is exceptionally expensive, as of course you will understand. We did actually go to 7 days a week in 1997. And in 2005, as you can see from the slide, we leased a second helicopter. We started night operations in 2016, and the 150th night landing zone was Newton Ferris, which isn't that far from you. So we've now 150, we've probably got 1 or 2 more now, live community sites available across the county. A few technical things that you can actually see there. We became an independent registered healthcare provider. We do all sorts of things, like we registered with the Quality Care Care Quality Commission. I get it wrong every time. We have a patient services team which look after the patients once everything has been completed and liaise with them. We have 23 critical care paramedics and 15 part-time doctors. We're so popular that last year we had 4 vacancies for paramedics and we had over 100 applicants. Nobody ever wants to leave us. I wonder why. This year we were really, really lucky. We were able to obtain money from the government, and we've introduced, which you would have seen on the first picture, 2 critical care rapid response cars. So they're based in Exeter, but they're able to attend anything that is possible at the time. So very occasionally it might be able to attend if the ambulance is the air ambulance is busy. Sometimes it's quicker to send the critical care car. Sometimes they both attend, but it gives us a lot of extra operations. And which you'll see very shortly, we took delivery of our new Airbus H145. It came over, I think, at the end of June, July, and I think it's now, Brian, it's been operational for about 3 weeks.
Yeah, the 11th, the helicopter finally went live.
So it's brilliant. Okay, Brian, we'll go to the next one. See if this works. Here we go. Isn't this lovely? I am sure you want to have all sorts of technical terms from me about the virus, the incubation period, people suffering sliding scale of illness, the number of people who the virus affects, and the level of PPE that's needed. It's caused a lot of problems for us, and particularly with our pilots and our paramedics being able to have the level of PPE that we require in order to protect them. Can we go on to the next slide, Brian, please?
Yep.
Now, one of the problems in a helicopter is that you can't separate the pilot from the from the paramedics. There was no pre-hospital screening. Also, there was no approved visor for an aviation helmet, and respiratory masks and effective communications. So there was no aircraft separation at all. So given that scenario, our helicopters were stood down. Go on to the next one, Brian. So we were really, really lucky. Brian's slightly better expert on this than I am, but we've had a number of companies who have actually helped us. And the principal one, I think, was Babcock in Plymouth, but they developed a screen which could fit between the pilot's cockpit and the paramedics, so there is an ideal separation from them. We also were able to look at the problem that the pilot and the paramedics needed to be able to communicate. So I think if we see the next one, Brian, I think is it the slide?
Yeah, there you have Chris in his full PPE.
It looks like something out of Star Wars, doesn't he? Is that one of the paramedics?
Yeah, I think that's Chris Saunders underneath that lot.
Okay, so you can see what they look like with that. But if you look at the next one, we've got a little video for you, which actually shows things that were actually happening to help us operate more effectively. Brian.
This is your pack that will come with your face shield for your helmet. You'll have the 2 arms that attach to either side of the helmet, which you can join together in the middle here. You'll have the female part on the inside, which mates with the male part on your helmet. Probably best to put this on when your helmet's on, and also to put your shield on there first. It seems to be a bit easier. Okay. So you've got these spigots that run all the way around the actual arm itself. You attach your shield at one end. The ones in the middle just really to keep it from moving laterally, and then the ones on either end are the ones that fix it in position. So you'll find that one's a little bit harder to get on, which is good. So that's fixed solid in place. do a demonstration with your helmet on.
For me to wear, is that easy or?
If I do this one,
Yeah.
I'll show you how to use it. There is a bit of a knack to it which you'll get used to. So align these bits here. So they're in place now, and then just pivot it down. It won't go any further, that's as low as it'll go, and that's it.
And
ready.
you've clipped it on, have you? Does it just clip into place? Right,
Yeah.
okay.
So that's it now, that's solid. You can still access your microphone, you can still do your helmet up. As you can see, the larger portion here covers the eyes. There's a smaller portion here, because that gives you more movement. We found if it was even, you couldn't put your head down.
Okay,
So, and that's it. That's your full bit.
perfect. Awesome.
There you go.
Excellent. So we're so delighted that people could come up with something that is so simple. And this, and together with other organizations who've helped us, for instance, there's a company, can we go on to the next slide, Ryan? There's a company in Exeter called Luminous, and they're a special effects company. And they were able to make a wide range of PPE for us. So we have the face mask, we have that, and also there was a opportunity to develop a microphone system, which is actually worn around the throat, and the pilot and the paramedics within the helicopter could effectively communicate with each other without having to try and shout. I don't know if you've been in a helicopter, but it's quite noisy and rather difficult to actually hear what anybody's saying. So we also have, as I said, the critical care cars, and we have been very, very importantly communicating with everybody. And I'm a volunteer, and I would say that the communication from headquarters, from the fundraising team, from all the staff is absolutely fantastic. We get a volunteers weekly newsletter. We get emails from when certain things are happening. We are told about things that are going on before they actually start. So we kept knowledgeably informed about everything that's going on. Brian, can we go on to the next one, please?
Yep.
Now, oops, the critical care cars. Brian, I'm not quite sure which fund it came from, but about 18 months ago, the government gave £10 million to air ambulances within the country.
Yeah, it was announced at the budget, and it was basically money we had to apply for. So we had to set up a project for it and apply for the money, and we used our slice for 2 cars. And also there are some defibrillators coming, which if it hadn't been for the current situation would have been fitted to our shops by now, but they're still in the pipeline at the moment.
So within that budget, we've got 2 top of the range Volvo cars, and they're fully equipped, the same as the helicopters. And I knew there was a plan to put defibrillators outside each shop. So that'll be another way of using the funds. And we're very pleased to do that. So that's worked really well. Now, I think we had another slide. Before we do that, I would just mention to people what happens and how the helicopter is deployed. Now, when you make a 999 call and you ask for ambulance, it will go through to the call centre, which is based in Soughton. We have a full-time paramedic there who monitors all the calls, and she's called a Helicopter Emergency Medical Service Dispatcher, HEMS dispatcher. And they listen to the calls and they decide if a call is sufficient, providing the information is correct and knowledgeable, they will deploy the helicopter. and they will actually then scramble the helicopter and tell it where it's going. If it's at night time, it's a very clever system because all the night landing zones have a little mobile phone signal on the mast, and the HEMS dispatcher will know, because the pilot will tell them when they're within range of the landing site. She will be able to turn the lights on, and then when it departs, the pilot will tell her, and that person can actually turn the lights off again. So it's really, really good. Okay, Brian, can we have the next one? Because this is a new arrival, I think.
This is the video next from Lee and Jess.
Okay.
So here at Devon Air Ambulance, we have 2 helicopters and 2 Volvo XC90s. So we often get asked what's the best method to get to scene, whether that's by car or whether that's by helicopter. So our cars are particularly useful when a job is close to the airbase, or if we are attending a patient in the city centre. The aircraft are particularly useful if we're going to a job in a rural location or somewhere that's difficult to access.
So from today, you're going to see us out and about, back in the skies, and also in our critical care cars. And we are going to respond by either air or by land, depending on the patient needs. Make sure if you see us out and about, you give us a wave.
I like the advert for the music. When you see the helicopters, have a look at the registration on the side. The new one is DAAS, and the other one is DAAN. And I think it's purely coincidence, isn't it, Brian? But the one that finishes with the suffix N will go up to North Devon, which was currently based in Exeter, and the new one, the S one, will be based in Exeter Airport.
That's right. That's right. I think originally N was for North Devon because it was actually at North Devon when I first joined the charity. I think this got swapped over when we started night flying.
The annoying thing for me is that I actually live within a stone's throw of Torbay Hospital, and the helicopter comes right over my house, but it comes at such an angle I can't actually see the sign on the side, so I never know which one it is. But when I can, I try and pop up to the helicopter landing pad and have a word with the pilots there, particularly if my granddaughter's with me. She loves it. Right, the next slide, please, Brian.
Is the video.
Okay. Here we go.
Okay, that's just a little video of the new one, which went out on the 11th of November for the first time in live action. It's our big investment in the community for this year at roughly 8.4 million euros, fully equipped, and it's taken nearly 2.5 years to get there, and it turned up in the middle of a pandemic, so we weren't able to take it around the county and show it off, I'm afraid.
Those of you who are really observant would have noticed that the old helicopter had only 3 windows. This one's got 4, and the old helicopter had the engine compartment inside the helicopter, whereas the new one is outside, which gives 25% more space inside, which is absolutely wonderful. Thanks, Brian. Next one.
Okay.
It's going to happen.
I can see it if you can't.
I can now, thanks, yeah. At the beginning of your meeting, ladies and gentlemen, you were talking about fundraising, and you are having the same challenges that not only ourselves, but all the other charities are having as well. And that is that traditional fundraising methods have stopped overnight. Events are cancelled, shops are closed, staff have been furloughed. And so you're having to be very, very creative in how you actually do your fundraising. We're lucky now that I think, Brian, all the shops are open now.
Well, they're not at the moment because they're shut under lockdown until the 2nd.
Yeah. But they're actually, what we have done is we have actually altered the shops so that you can't actually go and shop in the shop. You can actually go to the counter and you can actually do what you need to do, or you could bring things in which are put in a special place. But our shops are actually will be open again next week. And we've also started doing some very, very creative online fundraising events. So can we have the next slide, please, Brian?
There you go.
Right, I think this is basically tells you it. We had in June, we had the virtual base-to-base challenge. That raised about 7,000-8,000, Brian?
Around about 8,000 by the time the last of the money come in for that one. We were very happy with that one. That was our first big virtual event that we've organised. It cost relatively nothing to put on, but we had a lot of people engage with it. Basically, to walk 40 miles, the distance between the two air bases that we have, at their own pace over 3 weeks. I worked it out that meant I only had to do 2 miles a day and joined in, and didn't quite work out that way. So I had to make it up at the weekend with a little bit of extra mileage, but it was a good event for us. It got a lot of people engaged at a time when we were normally been getting ready to go out for the summer and be out and about with people. We had quite a few of our volunteers join in, and it made for some nice pictures as well. We've had a lot of junior fundraisers join in that one.
And I think if you look at the bottom of our slide, the stability of legacies, normally we would put a slide up with a pie chart, and I think you would see, and it's the same more or less with every charity, about 34 to 35% of our income comes from legacies. And that is really, really important, and it helps to keep us going. Thanks, Brian.
So there's just a little bit about the shop. One of our prime considerations is that we have a lot of volunteers in our shop, and making sure it was safe for them as well as for our staff and people shopping meant we had a bit of a rearrangement. We had the quarantine donations coming in for 72 hours, which we invested in some roll along cages so that you bring it in on a Monday, it gets locked in there until Thursday before the volunteers were allowed to pick through and get it up for sale. Stuff is for sale in the shops utilizing the window, but eBay and a new online shopping platform that we've launched just before this current lockdown have also proved big successes at a time when the high streets are naturally quieter than they would be.
Okay, Brian, I'm going to put you on the spot. Which shop is that?
That's Bideford.
I actually knew the answer, but I thought I'd just test you.
Yeah, that's Donna on the left. Not sure who that is.
Okay, can we go on to the next slide, please, Brian?
Yeah, there's your pie chart. With legacies and lottery making up over half of the income in 2019. That's the bit that's still been coming in by and large through this year. Whereas the left-hand side, community fundraising, that's the likes of myself and Graham getting out and about at motorbike shows, agricultural shows, events that go on organised by other people, and our shop income has virtually dropped to nothing. It's starting to pick up a little bit at the moment, but it's just become so unpredictable to try to plan things that it's still not easy for people. But we are seeing some nice virtual challenges and events going on, but we know that we will probably be £2 million down by the end of this year on what we would have expected based on those figures from 2019. 2019 represents about £9.5 million their income, so a single percentage actually is quite a bit of money to us.
Okay, thanks, Brian.
And there we have Noah. Do you want to talk about Noah?
I'll talk about Noah. You probably know more about Noah than I do, but I'm not sure how old Noah is. About 10? 9, 10?
Yeah, 10, 11 I've got in mind.
Yep, I think Noah is one of these. Those of you who have teenagers in your family or have had them know how active they are. And he decided to have a kickabout with his friends. And from wherever he lives, he was going downhill on his bike. Unfortunately, he came into contact with a car, and he came off worst. And he hit the front of the car and was thrown in the air, landing on his back. I think that I'm not sure what injuries he suffered other than from his back, but the air ambulance was called, and he was able to be flown to the Bristol Children's Hospital for further tests. I guess from that photograph, he's made a good recovery, and his parents are wonderful because they've been doing a lot of fundraising for us.
They have led a campaign to encourage more people to wear cycle helmets, because Noah's incident undoubtedly would have been worse with his impact if he hadn't been wearing his cycle helmet that day. He was somewhere out on the Devon-Cornwall border, that sort of area, and he was flown to Bristol. So he was one of the early patients that was actually airlifted after we started flying back in the summer.
As a little aside, our air ambulance, or the air ambulances throughout the country, are given priority over every other air traffic, except unless the Queen is flying. And there's a classic example. We were flying to Bristol Children's Hospital a couple of years ago, and the Red Arrows were due to give a display, and they were stood down for half an hour to allow us to fly in. So you see, we do get priority occasionally. Thanks, Brian.
There's the big thing. We've already spoken about what we think we're estimating will be down this year, but actually the service has been pretty much as busy as any other year. We need to continue to find the income to pay for it. So we have been targeting playing our lottery as a campaign earlier on in the year for just £1 a week. Trying to encourage more people to make a direct debit for regular giving. And we've definitely seen an increase on money coming in through our website. Now, some of that could be our regular donors who come and see us at various events around the county. I've met several people more than once at their local show who've come up to give us money because somewhere in the past we've helped them out. Our fundraising events have had to move virtual, but we've also had lots of people organising their own great little events. Virtual carol concerts are starting to be a thing on our diary, as well as some Christmas lights, but we've had the big launch events this year. And also it's always great when people remember us in their will. I mean, the whole charity really is a legacy incident, but it's made so much of a difference since that went on. It's nice when we open an envelope and receive a thing, and it's some money that's there in memory of somebody. They've wanted to leave it to us, and it makes such a big difference through the year. The
other thing that is really helpful is when people donations to us is the gift aid facility. Those of you like most of us are taxpayers. Last year we were just short £500,000 in gift aid, and that does make a heck of a difference. I don't know whether Rotary are able to do the same thing, but it's certainly another valuable income. Brian's going to tell you about this particular appeal.
This is something we've really taken on board this year. We've always done something for Christmas, but this year, with the extra time to put into it, we've really focused on the Christmas appeal. We're trying a few different things out with various screens around shopping centres and some of the bus stops. We've relaunched text to donate, which has been quiet for us for a little while. I heard Darren talking about you taking it on as well this year again. It's the kind of thing that's back on the rise. as a trend through charities for actually bringing money in. So we've relaunched it with a company called Donor, and we're hoping that when it's all combined, all our avenues, including Helipack magazine, which will be going out next week, that it will bring in a reasonable sum for us this year. And the other big thing, I've already mentioned the lottery. 75p in the pound roughly goes into the charities fund from every pound paid into the lottery. The happy chappy with the check there is my dad, because we both started playing at the same time, and he was the first one to get a payout of it. And they made me take the check home and present it to him to get the picture. So there he is with his third prize check of £135 one Friday.
I would actually say that I was doing some research, and you see the postcode lottery advertised on the television. Well, the postcode lottery only gives 35% of its income to charity, whereas we give 76 pence in every pound goes back to us. The rest of it goes in prize money and administration. And I think that just says something about what a wonderful organisation we are. I'm not saying the postcode lottery is not, but it seems sad that they only give, you know, less, or just over a third of their income to charitable organisations. The other thing I would also say is if you join, and I think now when I spoke to Tracy last, you could actually do it online.
It's not quite there at the moment, I don't think.
Okay, so you'd have to download a form. But Tracy, who does it, she's a wonderful lady, really larger than life character. And Friday lunchtime, she does the draw. And one of her pleasures in life is to actually ring the person who has won the £1,350 on Friday lunchtime. So I live in hopes that I'm going to get a call from her, but it's never happened just yet. Right. I think have we finished now, Brian?
That's it. For any questions, the only thing I would add into the presentation, if you want to see any of the videos again, they are on our YouTube channel, as well as some others, including a sort through the critical care car. But at nearly 5 minutes long, it's a bit long to put in the middle of the presentation, but there are some interesting videos on there.
Right, I'll finish by saying at the very beginning, I asked where your nearest night landing zone was to Plympton. Any volunteers? It's gone quiet. I'll save you the trouble. It's actually Derriford Hospital.
I was going to say that.
But there is one at Ivy Ridge, and there's one at Newton Ferrers. So those are probably the nearest ones that you have. And the last one is, what is the sporting injury that we attend the most? And I'll tell you, it's not rugby or football.
Cycling.
Pardon?
Cycling.
No, not cycling.
Something weird like cricket?
No, it's actually horse riding.
Oh, horse riding.
I was just about to say that. Yeah.
We have a lovely story. About 2 years ago, there was a lady riding with her friends near Venford Reservoir, and she parted company with the horse, and they were able to get a mobile phone signal because she was quite critically injured. The helicopter came but couldn't land properly. He could only hover. They dispatched the paramedics, and he flew the 2 miles off to the reservoir car park. And the paramedic realized that she needed to be put on the stretcher and carried back to the car park, the 2 miles. And apparently the lady was no lightweight. And that whilst they were contemplating how they were going to do this, over the horizon came 10 army cadets on maneuvers. So guess what they did? They came to the rescue. So it proves that our helicopter is useful, it is versatile, and we can deal with most things that come up in front of us. So thank you very much for that, and I hope you've enjoyed the talk.
Thank you, guys. That's a fantastic talk. Like we were saying, like yourselves, we've had to think outside the box with for fundraising, and it's good to see that you guys have got some great ideas there for fundraising. Interestingly, the tech service you're using, Donor, that's the same service we're using as well, and I think a lot of Rotary clubs are using using that particular service. So it'll be interesting for us to see how it goes, because it's our first foray into that side of things. So before I pass over to Michelle, thanks. Are there any questions at all?
Yes.
Yes, David.
One of the things that was mentioned, you said you've not been really less busy during lockdown than before. Does that imply that you would be more busy if you had more facilities?
It's something they're always looking at to see how numbers stack up. When the helicopter wasn't in use, they had the 3 critical care cars on the road because we were loaned an extra one to help out with the service. But it is something the medical team has access to, reviewing incidents that we could have gone to if we'd been available, for instance, or not busy elsewhere. They use that kind of thing to review, like our nighttime flying. When we originally started nighttime flying, we're flying till midnight, but they use the information that they get to assess that actually 2 o'clock was a better figure, because in that 2-hour slot, there were things we could have been going out to with enough frequency to warrant not only stretching the crew out for that 2 hours by moving the shifts around, but also the HEMS desk needed to be manned for that extra 2 hours. So they're always looking at that. Our long-term aim is 24-hour service, but does 2 o'clock till 7 o'clock in the morning warrant the expense of a third shift? That's the kind of thing that they're always looking at to see what's going on. I can't see us ever stepping up to be running 3 helicopters, for instance. Just don't think there would be enough need to warrant having 3 helicopters and all the running costs and the crews available to do it.
What about Cornwall?
Cornwall have got 1 helicopter. They're a separate charity running a similar way that we do. The beauty of it being that we do what's right for Devon. So we have 1 helicopter up north, 1 helicopter up south. It gives us the best coverage. Dorset and Somerset have got a helicopter between them. There's another one at Bristol. There's 1 in Wiltshire. They're all controlled from Exeter's call centre. So actually, if we need backup, like for instance, when there was that bus incident near Totnes last year, it was in the news. There are some lovely, in inverted commas, photos of 4 helicopters in a field. There's our 2, the Cornish one and the Somerset one, all parked there because they're controlled from the 1 call centre who's dispatching. And if they felt the need for the Coast Guard helicopter to help us as well, that would have been sent. They've got that kind of facilities available. But you will see our helicopter in Bude and down on the south coast of Cornwall, and you'll see Cornwall in North Devon and around your area possibly as well, because they're utilising what is available to cover incidents the best way that they can.
Thank you.
Kelly, I think you might have had a question, but it may have been answered there.
Well, I was kind of curious in terms of the logistics of somebody needs the ambulance and kind of how it gets decided whether you guys in terms of the air would be best suited to get there rather than anybody else. You kind of answered it a little bit.
Yeah, so Graham's told you about the HEMS desk. They're specialists. They're listening in to the 999, and what they're listening for is the sort of trigger words and things that sound like it's more likely to be of interest to us or by need. So it might be that it's a child, a head injury, a motorbike incident. It might be it's in the middle of Dartmoor, as Graham's described to you, or on the coast path somewhere that's not very accessible. All those kind of things, and they are assessing that before it gets called out, and that they've got that difficult decision to make. Basically, it's
so
not
that's done manually.
Yeah, by talking to the person who's calling in, and that's why it's very dependent on the information that comes from site for any of the 999 calls. We did an exercise, that's the office staff, about 2 years ago with a genuine 999 call, and basically I either had to move to the right of the room or the left of the room as we're hearing this call coming through to decide on whether you would send somebody out or not. Would you dispatch the helicopter at this point, move left or right? And it was quite an interesting thing because it seemed to be changing as you're going through, but it was a genuine one. And actually what the guy had was a heart attack somewhere. So that's the kind of thing we would have gone to. because basically the quicker we can get somebody to hospital in a heart attack situation, the better their chance of survival, as well as the specialist equipment that we've got on board to help on site. I mean, that's the big thing really, that even in the 5 years I've worked for Air Ambulance, the shift has been from picking people up and taking them to hospital as fast as we can to actually, it's now like taking the emergency room to the scene of the incident. And they've got some really good equipment. They're really highly trained individuals, and it's actually reduced the need to take some people by air because they've been able to largely sort the situation in situ. And actually, if they can send somebody in the land ambulance, then the helicopter's free to go again to somebody else.
I think the important thing also is that, as I say to people, the helicopter is like a hospital that flies to where it's needed. The people who are on board are highly trained, usually critical care paramedics, and there are also some doctors who have some fantastic skills, and they can actually do on when the helicopter lands what they would normally have to wait to do when they get to the hospital. So that's why it's so very, very, very important to keep the helicopter flying and to provide the service, because you never know when you might need it and what skills might be needed on site.
And just touching on something Brian just mentioned there about how where possible using a land ambulance rather than the helicopter, I can speak from experience, having been in a RTA many years ago where both were called out to my assistance because I had quite a big accident on the M5. Fortunately, my injuries weren't that bad, and I was able to be taken to I think it was Tiverton Hospital by road. So the air ambulance was actually was stood down quite quickly, but I do remember it coming in, landing in the field next to the M5 there. So.
Well, what we find sometimes is that the air ambulance and the land ambulance are called, that the paramedics on board the air ambulance are able to provide the specialist care. Once that's given, it's sometimes cheaper and quicker for the land ambulance to take the patient to the nearest hospital, as you say, freeing up the air ambulance for the next call.
Right. Another consideration at the moment is it actually if they're carrying somebody to hospital, which of course they will do if the need is there. But actually then the helicopter is basically out of action for an hour while they clean it through at the current situation. It's got to be done the same as any of the land ambulances are. If they're carrying a patient, then they've got to be out of commission long enough to be deep cleaned before they carry the next person, which of course is a consideration that's got to be factored in. You know, some of the other air ambulances didn't stop flying, but they weren't carrying people either earlier on in the year, and that wasn't really the way that it could be. But
it wasn't the most efficient way to work.
Everybody's got slightly different setups in their helicopter. It's not, there's no standard. But we weren't happy really with patients in the helicopter until we had everything that you saw earlier on in place. And things like that separation wall, while it kind of looks like a bit of polythene that's been duct taped into place, and you wonder why it took so long and things, and it has been called our most expensive shower curtain ever. It was classed as a modification to the aircraft, which had to be rubber stamped off and fitted by approved engineers and so on. And the beauty of COVID is actually people who had that kind of responsibility did it quickly. You know, we were only not flying for about 3 weeks, but it could have easily been a bit longer under normal circumstances, as certificates and things get shuffled around on people's desks.
Okay, Michelle, could I ask you to give the vote of thanks, please?
Yes, certainly. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. It was really fascinating to listen to how the Devon Air Ambulance started, and obviously how it's grown since 1982. A lot of stuff that I didn't know before, I don't know about everybody else, but also that your ability to adapt and the challenges that you've had with COVID and what you've done, like you were just mentioning with the PPE and your shower curtain. It's really interesting to see how you've managed to adapt and change, as well as with fundraising. So thank you very much for your really interesting talk tonight, and I'm sure everyone will join me to say thank you.
Thank you.